Fantastic. Now, that's a very good background for us to really look at, and I think the next speaker, is certainly going to throw a light on what would be those enablers, that would enable an organization to focus on to build a culture of quality and ensure that the organization thrives on it. So without much ado, let me introduce the next speaker. Rajni, is our next speaker, and she is going to speak on how every function within the organization, which requires the right people and the right skills, will need to be nurtured through various enablers. And she's going to highlight the specific points on how to create an environment for such enablers in a company. And to everyone who do not know Rajini, Rajini is a very prominent speaker at STC and a regularly appreciated speaker. She is a senior vice president at QAI Infotech and comes with a lot of knowledge and perspective on people enablement and building a culture of excellence. Over to you, Rajni. All yours.
Thanks, Pradeep. Thanks for the introduction. Let me share my screen. I guess you guys are able to see my screen, right? Yeah, Pradeep, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Super. So let's get started with that. Firstly, great conference coming along very, very well. I miss being, in person, the physical conference and everything, but I think this is much better than even, what we all expected. So thank you, STC team. And as you rightly mentioned, this is my 8th year here at STC. 2013 was when I first started. I think we've all come a long way. The conference just gets better every year. So thank you for the invite. Thank you, audience. Firstly, I really hope and wish you all are doing, safe and keeping healthy. So why did I pick this particular topic? I said, this particular year has been a focus of how do we remain healthy? How do we remain safe from a personal standpoint, but from a professional standpoint? If we've got to look at it professionally, what does it take in terms of being enabled, which is a strong need of the hour, especially given that quality has come a really, really long way. So if you look at the entire transformation journey, a lot has been happening in terms of digital transformation this particular year. And quality is continued to be seen as a key enabler for digital transformation. But have we taken that moment to sit down, internalize, appreciate as to whether we are enabled to enable others? That is the key question. I think Ritu kind of set the premise with the introduction to technical excellence. So we will delve further deeper into it, saying, are we enabled to enable others in this journey of business and digital transformation? So with that, let's start looking at the content out here. So firstly, the pandemic impact. Yes, it's certainly been a year that has thrown all of us out of gear. But if you really see, in one sense, there is some positivity that has really transpired out of it as well. So if you see the data, a study shows that digital transformation, which has been happening at a mind-boggling pace in the last decade, thanks to all kinds of evolutions around cloud, mobile, social computing, especially this particular year, has further accelerated. It has accelerated by an average of 6 years, and that is phenomenal. So really think about it, right? So you have a child that has to go through his or her milestones. And let's say the child all of a sudden accelerates the milestones by 6 years. Are we ready for it? A child that's supposed to crawl all of a sudden stands up and starts running. Are we ready for it? Are we strategized for it? Have we planned for it? Have we accommodated for it? That is a big question that we have on hand this particular year. And while we all understand that innovation is very, very important, we've accommodated for innovation. The important thing is it continues to be constrained. Until last year, if you see, there were a lot of constraints around exec approvals, budgets, legacy systems that have got to be replaced, lack of a clear plan. all of that, I think, are giving way this particular year. And if you see the study, technology companies top the charts when it comes to digital transformation. So all of this I see as a positive outcome for the industry, especially this year. And what does it mean for the quality fraternity? So I've taken a few data points here in this particular slide and subsequent slides from this year's World Quality Report. So thanks to the team for that. So specifically looking at quality, quality continues to be seen as an enabler for the digital transformation journey, primarily because it focuses on end user experiences. It brings in reliability not just from a functional performance, but from a non-functional angle as well. It brings in focus not just on external end user facing products, but any of the internal deliverables as well. And quality continues to be rightfully seen as a collective ownership, where it's not just the tester that is responsible, but the entire team, both business and the engineering teams, that continue to be responsible. So, with all of this, rightfully so, quality continues to be seen as a huge enabler for this digital transformation journey, in the digital transformation journey. And if you see what the World Quality Report this year says, specific outcomes that organizations are still looking for from quality are around business assurance, how it can be a custodian of the quality of the product before it is released in the market, how it can continue to bring in digital happiness in terms of end user experiences, how it helps serve as that brand ambassador, how it can continue to provide quality without compromising on speed. But more importantly, two particular points that have been added this year is how can you automate not just your scripts and your the core tests itself, but how can you automate whatever is automatable in the entire process, and how can you enable everyone on quality? So I think these are two important additions this particular year, recognized as goals by the teams as far as the quality fraternity goes. So that said, we've looked at what is the pandemic impact, why quality is still being seen as an enabler, but is it a bed of roses out there? Definitely not. We continue to be riddled by challenges. I've just listed a couple out here. One, firstly, the spend on quality continues to go down. I don't necessarily see this as a challenge. In fact, if you see again the World Quality Report talks about how the spend this particular year is the lowest, if you will, in the last 8 years. 2015, I remember talking in STC where it was the highest, it was about 35%. I was concerned back then, saying more than one third of the IT budget, if we are consuming for quality, should I be happy? It's a double edged sword. Should I be happy that there is so much spent? Or should I be concerned that there are inefficiencies that more than one third of the budget is being consumed by quality? So, to that extent, this is not truly a problem. 22% is what has been the average IT spend on quality this particular year. But what is more concerning for me, what is more bleak, is that 55% of the respondents say that they do not have the right test processes and methodologies in place. They talk about the lack of quality, not being able to meet the quality goals because of not having the right QA expertise, not having the right levels of automation, not having the right test environments, not having the right test data. These are larger concerns. If we have got to enable others and digital transformation is going at such a rapid pace, and if we are not enabled ourselves, is this the right direction for us to really move forward? Or is this the time? Is this that strong need of the hour for us to pause to see what do we need to enable ourselves so as to enable others? So that brings me to the crux of my presentation, where the strong need of the hour is key quality enablers. In very simple terms, what does an enabler mean? An enabler is not just something, it's not just someone. It could mean something or someone that is going to make something possible. So just keep that very simple definition in mind as to what an enabler is. And with that, I'll start off with an analogy out here, right? So if you've got to parent First of all, you've got to take care of yourself, right? Self-care for better parenting. It's as simple as that. If you've got to enable and bring in quality as a support factor, you first should be enabled. I'll give you one more analogy out here. I'm sure we all have heard the in-flight announcements that in the event that an oxygen mask is required, you take care of yourself first before you take care of your children. Uh, Again, today's connotation, oxygen masks give us a completely different meaning. But again, on a serious note, what are those enablers? What do we need to be enabled? And herein, rightly, reflection is often called as the growth enabler. So it is important for us to sit down, reflect, and see what do we need to really be able to move forward. So from this point on, I'll start really talking about those enablers. I'll have a couple of premise slides and then go into the buckets of enablers that I want to discuss. See, typically in any organization, in any industry, if you will, these are some of the standard business growth enablers that we all know. Understanding the business purpose, what is the market potential? Do I understand the products and services that my organization offers? What is the end user experience we want to bring in? What is the strategy around marketing, communications, business development, sales? So the way I look at it is for quality to be enabled, we need to have visibility into and coupling with some of these parameters. We need to have investments into some of these parameters. And again, we'll start looking at some of these in greater detail right now. So, as I was putting this content together, right, firstly, it's based on a lot of experience working on multiple projects, multiple clients, a lot of research, interesting articles that are available online, as well as, a few discussion with some industry experts as well. I must thank people like Hari Babu, Rahul Vishwaroop. I've had, once I decided that this is going to be my topic, I went and picked their brains as well, saying, hey, this is what I plan to take. If you all have any inputs, let me know. So I've incorporated some of their inputs as well along the way. So therein, I found this one particular slide interesting, which from an enablement angle kind of sums it all up. So let's start with this center point, right, of test ops. Test ops plays a very important role, if you will, in that cycle of a DevOps. And what this helps do is to establish that harmony between shifting left and shifting right. And basically, it influences and transforms several pieces in the organization, right from inculcating a culture of collaboration and learning, because the moment that comes in, that gets reflected in a tester's mindset and behavior, helps establish strong connections in bringing the testers early on, seeing testing not as a function necessarily, but not just as an activity, but rather as a function that everyone should, get involved in their spheres of operation. And what this means is we become that liaison and we become that connect between the dev team and the ops team, and be able to share, those inputs and enablers around technical excellence. When all of this happens, this then translates into a shifting right as well, where testing is continued way after production release as well. Look at it from a telemetry standpoint, from a beta testing kind of an effort, synthetic monitoring, looking at logs, and also investing in what do I need, not just to be able to test using the latest technologies, testing products that are built on the latest technologies, but how can I incorporate those technologies to become more efficient in whatever I do? So, herein, if you see, what are those enablers? Bringing in that culture of collaboration and learning, investing in new technical skills for testers, investing in innovation incubators so that those reflect as effective solutions in our testing processes. These, if we see as key enablers, again, this may still sound sort of at a very high level at this point. We will, sort of drill deeper into in the subsequent slides. But just keep these in mind at this particular point, that these will serve as key enablers to bring in that harmony between shifting left and shifting right, and making test ops really a journey towards continuous testing and improvement. So let's now drill in. The same World Quality Report respondents from the quality fraternity continue to highlight that if we've got to become efficient, we've got to shift left early on. implement intelligent autonomous solutions, not just in terms of automating the core tests at hand, but the entire process. How do we enhance testing environments and, more importantly, testing data? This is a beast. In my opinion, this is very, very important. And we'll talk about this in a bit out here, because however smart the teams may be, if the test data is not handled well, that can really impact the entire team. Um, Helping the others again own quality in their spheres of operation, removing redundant tests. Focus, early on in the cycles, we may be really tempted to add tests, build a really large test suite, but be very, very critical about how you build your test suite early on. Because rather than becoming an enabler, it can pull you down in the path to inefficiencies if those are not taken care of early on. So, with this premise as to how the pandemic has influenced how quality is seen as an enabler, how we need to take care of ourselves because we still have a bunch of challenges as a fraternity, and what we need end of the day is enablers. Let's start looking at these enablers. So, what have I done out here? In terms of enablers, I've categorized them. I've categorized them as two enablers per slide, focusing on people, test process and methodologies, cross-function, technology, infrastructure, and the last set, for want of a better name, I've put them under the miscellaneous category. And one thing to note is keep in mind, not all of these enablers are going to come fall on your lap. Some of these you need to internally institutionalize. Some of them you've got to go ask from the external stakeholders. Some of them it's a matter of merely asking, merely setting the right expectations. And also keep in mind these enablers are not going to be static. So continuously look to see if these enablers are going to make sense for you. What I provide in the next 3 slides may not even be completely comprehensive, but pick and choose, align them with your needs. And what I've also done in calling them out is I and E. I based on whether it's got to be internally institutionalized within the fraternity. E if it's got to be something that we've got to ask the external audience. I plus E if it's going to be a balance. So with that, let me move on to the first category here, which is people enablers. Largely need to be enabled within the fraternity itself. So here, if you see, I really see two sets of people, right? One, see, in the goal or in the drive to unified engineering, we've long been talking about SDETs, we've long been talking about quality engineers merging with the development teams, so on and so forth. But what is the reality on the ground? We still largely have two categories of people within the fraternity. One, functional engineers, experts who really understand the product end to end, who really understand end user experiences. They've taken a few automation trainings here and there, but they're struggling in the path or in the journey towards automation. How do I move forward? You have people in the industry with 10 years, 12 years, 15 years experience who are in this bucket. Simultaneously, you have automation engineers who are really good with frameworks, tools, technologies. Some of them, as young as 1 or 2 years into the fraternity, but who may not have that complete understanding of test processes, functional knowledge, end user experience. So here is a synergy right here. We need to build this enabler within the quality fraternity, the people function, where let's say for the functional experts, why don't we lend a hand saying, why don't you design test cases in a BDD style, in a given when then kind of a format? Why don't you run the automation suite, maintain it, look at failures? And similarly, why don't those functional experts guide the automation engineers into what it takes for functional understanding? What are solid test processes to implement? If we are able to do this internally as an enabler, there is no pointing back that the external industry is going to do to us. And herein, quality leaders, it's very important for us to foster this conducive learning environment so that people within the quality function become enablers rather than people who are impeding the overall progress and growth. So that's the first category. The second category that I want to spend some time on. If you remember, I had called out an earlier challenge that the World Quality Report said that 55% of the respondents say that they do not have the right test processes and the right methodologies. So here are some of my solutions to that. Here are some of the enablers that we need to build. Firstly, absolutely say no to free flow engineering. A discussion that Rahul and I were having as well. When I was quoting some of my examples, he was quoting some from his end as well. See, in this journey towards unified engineering, the younger generation of testers probably wouldn't even know what the situation was 10, 15 years back, 20 years back, where detailed product specs used to come our way. We used to use them to design, how should we move forward? What should the test be? Today, I'm seeing teams where we are pushing back on them. APKs to test being shared on WhatsApp messages. Absolute no to such kind of free flow engineering practices. This is only going to lead to chaos. So please absolutely put down your foot as an enabler. Say no to such lack of processes. We're not saying processes should be really in depth, but bring in some order and definitely say no to this kind of a free flow engineering approach. Secondly, test data efficiencies. A lot of inefficiencies around lack of right test data. So whether it is investment in APIs, whether it is investment in automation, direct access to database, invest in this upfront so that your test data is really robust. Similarly, I've seen teams where there are functional teams using a separate project in the test management solution, automation team using a separate project, all for the same product under test. So specifically watch for the tight integration between functional and automation teams, especially at a test management level. Next one, ongoing upgrades to frameworks. Just a couple of hours back, Raman, who's our head of test automation, he spoke about a templatized framework for rapid test automation. So don't settle, never settle should be your mantra when it comes to frameworks. Look for ongoing upgrades and updates to see how these can continue to serve as your enablers. Finally, set realistic expectations because end of the day, artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation, Mahesh rightly spoke about it this morning. It's only as smart as you design them to be. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry when, a client of ours had a recent conversation with me saying, I don't know what is the return on investment coming from automation. It's not finding as many defects as that of a functional team. So I told the person, come talk to me if there are any escape defects from those automation scenarios. Then we will have a conversation. If your system is robust enough and your automation is validating them, why are you even cared about whether it is finding defects or not? So set the right expectations for the automation to serve as your enabler, not rather as a question mark as to what the efficiencies are. So these are the first two categories, if you will, in terms of people and test process and methodologies. The next set out here, cross-function enablers, technology enablers. This year, rightfully, a lot of investment is being made on the cross-functional side of things, non-functional performance, accessibility, security. A lot of investments are being made. Um, so similar to how we have certain expectations as functional engineers as to what it takes for us to become efficient, the non-functional teams also have certain requirements and expectations. So I went and spoke to my performance teams, my security teams, my accessibility teams. So here is sort of a consolidation of requests from their end, right? Firstly, as functional engineers, I think it's high time we become that first tier of support when it comes to non-functional areas. We cannot be not privy into these particular areas. Similarly, the non-functional engineers are asking that they be involved early on. They get the right functional knowledge. They get the right investments to build utilities and tools in case they do not have off-the-shelf solutions. We had a couple of instances in our performance team where they did not have the right tool to load test a chat application that was built on XMPP protocol. So quickly they were able to churn something internally. So allow for such investments as enablers to make the non-functional teams also shine well. Moving to the next category of technology enablers, we already spoke about how to move them into the journey of automation. But the next one is incubators. This need not be within the quality fraternity, but at an organization level. invest on incubators so that those learnings and research and experience is able to translate into what you do. Look for a lot of process level automation. RPA has become sort of the buzzword in the last couple of years. STC, couple of years back, we showcased how AI is and can be increasingly used in even areas like accessibility testing, where automation has been really hard so far. This particular year as well, STC has a lot of topics around using AI for test data management, for test effort management. So continue to invest in those incubators as well. The next set of categories, the last set of categories out here, infrastructure and miscellaneous. From an infrastructure standpoint, continue to ask for the right devices, ask for the right support. Yes, you may be invested in cloud based solutions, for instance, in mobile testing, but additionally look to see if you can set up such enablers within the organization as well. This year, specifically, as we all know, cybersecurity is a big thing, especially if we are all working remotely. Yes, we are taking care of the right processes and protocols, but it's still a big question mark. For instance, in our organization, one thing that we've done is we've started a service called cyber hygiene, where our security team is doing periodic checks to make sure, because we as testers, in our zeal to be creative and go break systems, can often try things which can borderline towards violating the needs of cybersecurity. So take help from IT teams, from security teams, so that they're able to additionally validate and give you the peace of mind that cyber hygiene is in place. Dashboards and analytics, this is something that Hari was, for instance, mentioning. If you need additional investments in such solutions, in addition to what your test management solutions are to offer, go ask for it. Oftentimes, you'll be surprised when you go ask for it how easy things are. You just hesitate in asking, but this is almost like your birthright. Go ask for those enablers so that you're enabled in this journey. The last category out here, miscellaneous enablers. Again, we've all come a long, long way. For people who do not know, again, the younger generation, back in the years, quality used to be seen as a team that is working in a black box model, does not really understand the product end to end, does not know what technology is all about. We work in a siloed space. Thanks to Agile, the integration, the shifting left, we've all come a long, long way. But this year, I think it could be a challenge if we don't take a conscious effort, because again, we're working remotely. So make a conscious effort in making sure you're tied back into the business overviews and roadmaps. And this kind of ties back to the point that Ritu also spoke about in her previous presentation. Don't underestimate the power of exploratory testing. It has a lot of value. It has to probably be prioritized. Not every product may reap the same level of value, but I think it's very important not to underestimate its power. But the last one here is the most important of them all. It's become a fad in the industry in the last couple of years to really expect a tester to be a generalist as well as a specialist in all areas, right? The same person is a functional tester, is an automation expert, is a performance expert, security expert, usability expert. Guys, the way I look at this is even if you go to a doctor, to a general physician, let's say, while he's going to look at you holistically, beyond a certain point, he's going to recommend you to a specialist for further diagnosis and expertise. That's precisely what it is out here. We need the specialists, we need the non functional experts who coherently work with us. That said, we've got to be the first tier level of experts. But this, as an expectation, if we're able to set to the rest of the business and engineering teams and take care of these enablers from a people, process, technology, cross function, infrastructure, and these miscellaneous, I think will further definitely be enabled so that we can enable others in this journey. To wrap it up out here, after all of this enabling, this year was a classic example that things can really go haywire. So keep in mind, failure is and will still continue to be an option. In fact, it will be a very good option if we vow to learn from it, because without it, are we going to dare to challenge? Are we going to dare to take, go out of our comfort zone? But what is important is let's not bank on this failure being an option and fail to do our due diligence. And what does that due diligence mean? investing in these enablers to make sure we are ready to handle the challenges both today and moving ahead. So, in summary, there's an increasing need for quality. It's a great thing, I think, this year. We've got to be really grateful that we all have our jobs at hand. You may ask me this year, Rajni, due to the pandemic, have there not been any testers who lost their jobs? No, certainly there have been testers who lost their jobs as well. But which other industry or which other space has so many diverse opportunities? I was just reading in Deccan Herald last week a program called Hunt, Vulnerability Hunting, crowdsourced testing program where all you need is a good computer, a good internet connection, security knowledge, you're able to start investing in it right away. So, which other fraternity gives us this kind of flexibility and opportunities? And this demand for quality will continue. This demand for the diverse set of opportunities will continue post the pandemic as well. So, should this enablers ecosystem be? Because ultimately it is this enablers which is a right that you've got to go ask for. And as the conference has rightly themed it, the future of quality engineering is here, and that rests on how we imagine, innovate, and build the new normal. And whether it is the new normal or the old normal that may potentially come back, enablers are going to be very, very important. And I'll wrap it up with a quote from Dr. APJ Kalam, who says, "Total commitment is that common denominator of all successful men and women. But for this commitment to translate into outcomes, enablers are very, very important. So let's invest in these quality enablers to make sure we are enabled to enable others." That's all I had. Thank you. And hopefully, the next year will bring us back to the usual norm of physical events. But until then, let's continue to invest in these enablers.
Fantastic, Rajni. As always, charming to listen to you, and it's a pleasure, learning so many important perspectives, and glad to see, a similar thought process going across the world. And there was one question, however, in the sense, very interesting point of view. As they say, execution eats strategy for breakfast, correct? So while all the strategies that we put in play, one of the questions from the audience is how do we as leaders, make sure, that the product quality is still maintained in the current agile and pandemic world? Okay. So that's
It's
their question. Yeah.
absolutely. And if I may sum it up in one word, it's enablers. That's
Okay.
precisely the entire presentation, because you bring in these enablers, and when you bring in these enablers, it is a mindset change which is contagious, not going to rest just within the quality fraternity, but it will spread to the rest of the engineering teams, and you will see the outcomes happening. So, precisely enablers, because these enablers are at a strategic level, are at a tactical level as well. And the consolidated set will guide you into that journey forward.
Thanks a lot, Rajni. Thanks a lot. And that's a real pleasure to hear. And yes, like the other day when I was at a golf coaching camp, and I was trying to understand from this gentleman on how I can do better. Okay, and his answer was very simple. And I think there lies the wisdom of a great player. He said, just look at the ball, focus on the ball, and hit it at the sweet spot. And I said, that's exactly what I've been trying to do for the last 20 years. And the guy says, so you probably are not practicing enough. He says, so you got to have a right mind and you have to visualize hitting the ball. And he said, just keep your environment conducive so that you can play a great shot. So, and I think
Absolutely.
you're rightly said, enablers will make a lot of difference. It's not about the technique or the tool. Yeah.
Can I add a very quick 30-second story here, Pradeep, in line with this?
Please do.
Um,
Yes.
every night I enjoy reading one non-fictional book for a few pages, and to lighten myself, go into reading Tinkle. My daughter's Tinkle, a couple of things. So there was one story about Arjuna, which I think several of us would know out here, and as to how Drona really picked in investing in him. Right when all of them were ready for the archery competition, there was a bird sitting up in the tree. And Drona asked, saying, "Do you see the clouds? Do you see the tree? Do you see this? Do you see that?" There were other warriors who said, Yes, I see all of those. Yes, I see all of those. Drona was like, you guys are not ready. Arjuna came in and said, I don't see the sky. I don't see the clouds. All I see is the bird's eye. That is my goal. That is my target. And that's all I see. I think if we're so focused on that, which these enablers will help you get there, we can do that. All of this commitment, everything else will fall in place.
I know the environment certainly removes all the distractions that are required for an individual to focus on doing a good job. And if we can fix 80% of those inefficiencies, because in the estimation, when we used to factor in, and when we used to do estimations in the past for IBM, we realized that 375 factors in the environment contribute to the inefficiency of a project. And we actually collected data to show that these 375 parameters, if controlled well, you could actually say what you planned will become the reality. But then those 375 parameters are never in control in any organization, and each organization has a different way of treating them.
Absolutely.
And the lesson also was that, after a certain point of time, you get used to a level of inefficiency or bureaucracy, and somehow organizations tend to deliver a certain level of predictable outcome in spite of the inefficiencies that they deal with, and that looks very magical, right? So it's
Totally,
interesting.
totally. We're not saying inefficiencies shouldn't be there, but how do you still navigate your way forward?
Correct.
Avoiding all of those distractions. Thank you
Correct.
so much, Pradeep and the team. Lovely experience as always. Looking forward to the rest of the sessions.
Certainly, my pleasure again, Rajni, and thanks a lot for the session.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we will have the breakout sessions in individual rooms after a 10-minute break. We will please, go into those individual tracks. Please do enjoy those sessions of various best practices and papers as well. Look forward to seeing you in the individual tracks, and have a great evening as well. Pick up a cup of coffee and join in. The best part of the conference right now is that we all can pick up a coffee and then click through various rooms which we would like to attend. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. Thank you.